Welcome back to the channel, my beautiful observers. It's your girl, Ava. We all know the trope, the fiancé fae with the childhood best friend who constantly needs rescuing, effectively making you the third wheel in your own relationship. But what happens when that bestie fakes drowning at your yacht wedding to steal the spotlight, and your groom literally abandons you at the altar to play hero? In her first life, our protagonist Evelyn played the sacrificial lamb and lost everything: her fortune, her company, and her life, while the hero and the victim danced on her grave. But the universe has a wicked sense of humor, darlings. Waking up back on that yacht, Evelyn decides she's done saving people who want her dead. Buckle up, because we are about to watch a woman weaponize the very legal system and toxic pity plays that were once used against her. Someone fell into the water! Quick, throw a life buoy! The screams beside my ears were deafening. I suddenly opened my eyes, and the icy sea breeze mixed with a salty, fishy smell hit me in the face. Looking down, I was wearing that custom-made wedding dress. The hem, like a blooming white peony, yet it stung my eyes. I was reborn, back to that nightmare yacht, wedding between Jared and me, not far away on the sea surface. Haley was thrashing wildly. Her life jacket, which had been tied tightly, was now floating bizarrely several feet away from her. She miscalculated. She had only intended to fake falling into the water at our wedding to grab Jared's attention, to prove that her place in Jared's heart was higher than mine, the bride-to-be. But now, the fake drowning had turned into real drowning. Please, Jared, save me, glug glug. Jared, my husband, to be with whom I was about to vow to spend the rest of my life, let go of my hand the instant he heard Haley's cry for help. He rushed to the deck railing, didn't even look back at me, and raised his leg to jump into the sea full of whirlpools. In my previous life, seeing this scene broke my heart. I knew Jared had a serious drowning experience as a child, and was extremely afraid of water. The way he overcame his fear for Haley made me mistakenly believe it was a love that transcended life itself. I hastily grabbed him and shouted, "You can't swim, Jared. I'll go. I'll save her." Only because I used to be on the college swim team. So what happened? I desperately swam over, and Haley clutched my neck like a ghost, pressing me down into the water. She wanted me to die at that wedding. After being rescued ashore, I developed an explosive lung infection from severe drowning, and Jared, instigated by Haley, actually told the media. It was Evelyn who insisted on going down, and due to her improper operation, she almost got Haley killed. When I was bedridden and delirious, he used my trust to trick me into signing a full power of attorney for my assets. He took my company, my trust fund, and turned around to propose to Haley. And I, on a cheap hospital bed in a public hospital, died coughing up blood in suffocating pain. What a touching childhood sweetheart story. What a vicious Mr. Dongguo and the wolf. Jared, don't jump. This time I still shouted this line, my voice sharp and anxious, full of concern, for my fiancé fae, but I didn't rush forward to stop him. On the contrary, I silently stepped back 2 steps, retreating to the most stable part of the deck, crossed my arms, and watched coldly. In this life, you can save your childhood sweetheart yourself. Jared's body hung outside the railing, and at the moment he was about to let go, he froze. He looked down at the bottomless, turbulent Pacific Ocean beneath him, and his body began to tremble violently by instinct. He recalled the suffocating feeling of drowning when he was a child. In that moment, the fear of death overcame his true love for Haley. He mechanically turned his head, and when he saw me standing not far away, not rushing over to hold him while crying, Like in my previous life, a flash of bewilderment crossed his eyes, which then turned into shrewd calculation. "Evelyn, darling!" he shouted at me, his voice choking with sobs. "Quick, come pull me up. My leg is cramping. I can't get over." Cramping. This excuse was laughably clumsy. He just chickened out, but he needed a way to save face. "But Jared, Haley is still in the water." I covered my mouth in feigned surprise. "Didn't you say she was your life? That you couldn't lose her? Jump already. You are a hero." The guests around us all gathered over. Jared's face turned pale and flushed alternately. He never dreamed I would say this, at this moment. Haley's mother, Aunt Mary, rushed over crying. She used to be the housekeeper for Jared's family, and had always considered Jared as a golden son-in-law candidate. "Jared, please, please save Haley. When she was little, she developed a fear of water because she saved you." Aunt Mary collapsed wailing on the deck. These words precisely targeting Jared's sense of guilt. Other guests who were unaware of the situation also began to whisper, "Doesn't Evelyn know how to swim? Why isn't she moving?" Yeah, after all it is, a human life, even though she is the former butler's daughter. The moral blackmail drama was playing out again. Jared saw someone backing him up and gained more confidence. He looked at me, his eyes full of blame. "Evelyn, even if there are misunderstandings between us, Haley is innocent. I know you can swim. Please save her. I'll be grateful to you for the rest of my life." Look, this is the man I once loved deeply. He loves Haley, yet wants me to risk my life. He needs to maintain his hero persona, yet wants me to pay the price. I looked around, the guests' condemning gazes stabbing at me like needles. In this moment, if I don't go down, I am the cold, blooded, vicious woman. I laughed with utter desolation. Yes, at this moment, I must be the victim, Jared, I said loudly, making sure everyone present could hear. I'd love to save Haley too, but just half a month ago, I underwent open-heart surgery. A perfect lie. American medical records are protected by privacy laws. They can't verify the truth. The doctor strictly forbade me from going into water or doing strenuous exercise. Don't you remember that? I clutched my chest. Oh, the absolute brilliance of this move. Let's unpack the sheer psychological warfare here. Society practically demands that women set themselves on fire to keep others warm, especially when opportunistic bystanders start the moral blackmail. In her past life, Evelyn took the bait and paid with her life. This time, she realizes that you can't fight a professional victim with logic. You have to victim them, by fabricating a flawless medical excuse covered by HIPAA laws. She completely neuters Jared's gaslighting. He wanted to force her to be the bad guy so he could keep his hands clean. But Evelyn flipped the script, making him look like a sociopath, trying to drown his freshly operated on bride. That's chess, darling. My face paled to just the right degree. The guests' expressions changed instantly. The fiancée just had surgery, and the fiancé is forcing her to jump into the sea to save another woman. This is absolutely scum behavior. Jared was completely dumbfounded. He didn't expect me to fabricate such a perfect excuse for myself. Haley in the sea had no strength left to struggle, and her body began to slowly sink. No, Jared was truly panicked, even though he didn't care whether Haley lived or died. He knew that if Haley sank at his wedding, his reputation would be completely ruined. Having been stuck outside the railing for too long, his stamina had also reached its limit. Just as he was trying to clumsily climb back onto the deck, his foot slipped. With a shrill scream, Jared fell down like a bag of garbage. Perhaps it was heaven's will. His landing spot was incredibly precise, hitting Haley's head with perfect accuracy, just as half of it emerged from the water. Thud! A muffled sound, and a huge splash shot up into the air. I imagine Haley's concussion level at that moment must have been quite severe. This impact directly smashed Haley into deeper waters, while Jared himself, due to the massive recoil, completely lost consciousness after gulping down 2 big mouthfuls of icy seawater. The deck was in chaos, and the professional water rescue team finally launched their small boat and rushed out. I collapsed on the deck in a mess, covering my face with both hands, letting out painful sobs. "Oh God, Jared, why did you have to be so foolish? If anything happens to you, how am I supposed to go on?" I cried heartbrokenly. While the bridesmaids, all my loyal allies, quickly came over to surround me, blocking the cold smirk at the corner of my mouth that I couldn't quite suppress. The two were quickly pulled up, and Jared's condition was much worse than Haley's. Haley was just knocked unconscious, choked on a few mouthfuls of water, and although her life jacket had come off, she had grown up by the sea after all, and knew how to hold her breath. But Jared fell into the water completely unprepared, and in extreme terror, seawater crazily pouring into his mouth, nose and lungs. When that suffocating pain from his past life descended again, he convulsed violently while unconscious. The yacht's private doctor performed emergency CPR, watching the seawater mixed with blood threads spewing from Jared's mouth. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Darling, the pain I suffered in my past life is just the beginning now. Due to this sudden turn of events, the wedding naturally couldn't proceed. The yacht immediately returned to shore. As soon as the yacht docked, the two were sent to the best private hospital in the city center. I dragged my salt-stained wedding dress and stood at the emergency room entrance for 3 whole hours. My devoted persona couldn't collapse. I had to let the entire city's high society know that until the very last moment, I was praying for my fiancé. Even though Haley's room was right next door, in the early morning hours, Jared finally escaped mortal danger. But due to severe water inhalation and aspiration pneumonia in his lungs, he was admitted to the ICU and needed to rely on a ventilator to survive. This was exactly the result I wanted. After Aunt Mary learned that Haley was fine, just a minor concussion and facial abrasions, she finally had the energy to come looking for trouble with me. She rushed into the ICU corridor, saw me, and raised her hand to slap me across the face. "It is all because of you, Evelyn. If you hadn't been dawdling last night, refusing to get in the water, how would Jared have ended up like this? You jinx." Before that slap could land, a strong hand caught her wrist mid-air. It was my lawyer, David. He had already received my instructions and rushed to the hospital with his team. "Ma'am, if you don't want to spend the rest of your life in an American prison for assault and defamation, you'd better wise up," David said coldly. Aunt Mary was intimidated by the lawyer's presence. She resentfully withdrew her hand, pointing at my wedding dress, and said, "Don't get smug. When Jared wakes up, he'll know who truly loves him." I am also looking forward to him waking up. I gracefully wiped away tears that didn't exist from the corner of my eye, saying softly, "After all, we still have a prenuptial agreement that needs to be reconfirmed." At the mention of the prenuptial agreement, Aunt Mary's face turned completely pale. In my previous life, I was too foolish and didn't sign this agreement. Jared tricked me by saying, "Signing an agreement is an insult to our love." In this life, while preparing for the wedding, I had already used the trust fund clauses to force Jared to sign an extremely strict prenuptial agreement. If either party commits infidelity during the marriage or causes significant financial loss to the other party due to major personal negligence, They will have no right to divide the other party's trust assets and premarital property, and will leave the marriage with nothing in a divorce. The truth about Haley falling into the water last night was captured crystal clear by the yacht's surveillance. She undid the life jacket straps herself, and Jared jumped into the sea for her, causing an extremely bad influence in front of the public, leading to fluctuations in my company's stock price, which is also what David is secretly manipulating, Jared. When you wake up, you'll find that not only is your body ruined, but you can no longer live off a woman either. 2 days later, Jared woke up from his deep coma, but he would rather he hadn't woken up. The aspiration pneumonia caused by severe drowning made his lungs feel as heavy as if they were filled with lead. Every breath required the ventilator to frantically pump air in, producing a hoarse, wheezing sound like a broken bellows. His attending physician, Dr. Smith, looked at me with a grave expression. His legal, legitimate fiancée, who held full authority over medical decisions. Miss Evelyn, Mr. Jared's lung damage is very severe, and combined with his childhood drowning history, his lung tissue has developed an irreversible tendency toward fibrosis. He may, Dr. Smith paused, never be able to leave the oxygen machine for the rest of his life. Moreover, if he doesn't undergo extremely expensive experimental treatments, not covered by regular medical insurance, given his extremely weakened condition, he may not last more than 3 months. My heart suddenly tightened, but not from sadness, from excitement. 3 months. In my past life, I was sick for a full 5 years, watching them squander my wealth in pain and despair. 3 months is too cheap for him, since his mental state is currently unclear, and you haven't officially registered, only had a wedding ceremony, no marriage certificate, according to US law, his immediate family, that is. His parents have the primary medical decision-making authority, the doctor added. I clenched my fists. No, I can't let his parents get involved. His parents are notoriously greedy and cunning. Once they take over, they'll do everything possible to squeeze out every last bit of value from Jared, and might even turn around and sue me. Just then, Jared pushed open the ICU door. He struggled to turn his head, and the moment he saw me, his eyes filled with terror. Evelyn, his voice was so hoarse, it was barely audible, only his lips moving. His mouth was wide open, desperately gasping for the expensive oxygen in the ICU. I understood. In that moment, he had also been reborn. He remembered everything from his past life. How he tricked me into signing the authorization. How he took my company. How he watched me die vomiting blood. And now, the roles were reversed. He was scared. He was afraid I would do to him what he did to me in his past life. Pull out his breathing tube. I pushed past Dr. Smith, indicating I wanted to talk to Jared alone. I walked to the bedside, looking down at him from above. That once handsome, vain face now showed a strange purplish, blue color from lack of oxygen, with dark circles under his eyes. He looked as if he'd aged 10 years. Jared, I gently caressed his cold hand, my nails lightly tracing across his pulse. Dr. Smith said your condition is very serious. Without the latest experimental drug treatment, you might not make it through this month. But that treatment isn't covered by your insurance. It requires. I leaned close to his ear and whispered a number, $1 million down payment. Jared's pupils contracted violently. $1 million. He was just a middle-class gold digger. His savings weren't even enough to cover 2 days in the ICU. Evelyn, save me. I love you, he begged with difficulty, tears of regretter, perhaps fear streaming from the corners of his eyes. I love you too, Jared, so I've brought you the antidote. Through David, the lawyer's secret channels. I had already prepared 2 documents. I pulled out the first document, Healthcare Power of Attorney. Jared, as long as you sign this document, authorizing me as your sole medical proxy, I'll have the authority to sign for you to undergo that experimental treatment. I'll pay that $1 million for you. He hesitated. After all, he had lived 2 lifetimes and knew the weight of this power. In his previous life, he had used this very power to let me die naturally. Or, you can wait for your parents to get here from the East Coast. But Dr. Smith said you might not last until then. I made a motion to put away the fear of death finally overwhelmed the last bit of rationality. With trembling hands, under the witness of Lawyer David, he signed his name on the document that gave me control over his life. Immediately after, he took out the second document. To ensure I have sufficient funds to pay for your subsequent high medical expenses, Jared, you need to authorize me to temporarily manage all assets under your name. You know, the prenuptial agreement stipulates that if my property suffers losses due to your fault, you must compensate. Now, given your physical condition and your gross negligence toward Haley, that small apartment under your name and all your health insurance accounts will be mortgaged to me as compensation. This was a durable power of attorney for finances. With these 2 documents, not only was his life under my control, but every penny of his, even his health insurance accounts, would all belong to me. He looked at me, his eyes filled with despair, but he had no choice. If he didn't sign, he would die right now. He signed. Both signatures were written crooked. When I obtained those 2 documents, I took a deep breath of the expensive oxygen in the hospital room. Jared, in your previous life you used these 2 documents to take my life. In this life, I will use them to make you wish you were dead. And this is why I always tell you, ladies, to get a good lawyer. Poetic justice isn't just a concept. Here it's legally binding. Jared is a classic gold digger with a hero complex. He wanted the billionaire lifestyle without doing the work, and he used a medical power of attorney to essentially murder Evelyn in their past life, watching him, no Reborn and Hyper. Aware of his impending doom, desperately sign away his own autonomy and assets, out of sheer terror, is deliciously ironic. He thought he was buying his life, but he was actually just financing his own customized hell. Paperwork, ladies, it's the sexiest form of revenge. Having dealt with Jared's side, I finally had time to deal with Haley next door. Haley's condition was much better than Jared's. She only had a mild concussion and facial abrasions. She keenly sensed the publicity value of this incident, so she started live streaming on TikTok and online, packaging herself as a pitiful character who was bullied by a vicious fiancé at the wedding, and whose fiancé didn't hesitate to jump into the sea to save her. Not only did Evelyn refuse to save me, she also restricted Jared's personal freedom. She even used medical means to keep Jared in a coma, just to embezzle his properties. She still doesn't know I already got the power of attorney. Jared just had surgery last night, and she transferred him to a regular ward, and didn't even give him an oxygen machine, which was actually something I instructed Dr. Smith to do, under the pretext of observing his autonomous breathing ability. She sobbed during the live stream, showing off the almost invisible scar on her face. I have to admit, in this era where victims are always right, her strategy worked well. Overnight, my name became synonymous with cold-blooded tyrant. My company's stock price did experience fluctuations, but I wasn't panicking. That very evening, I released the wedding video I had edited long ago on the internet, secretly filmed by my bridesmaids. Not only is there that segment, the clip of Jared standing outside the railing in a standoff, with Aunt Mary morally blackmailing me. But there is also audio of how Jared framed and trapped me in his previous life. Embezzling my assets, this is forged evidence I created after my rebirth, using AI technology to replicate Jared's voice from his previous life. But in the American legal system, forged evidence, as long as it is realistic enough, can often muddy the waters, especially in civil litigation and public opinion battles. I haven't released it yet, because the best timing hasn't come. I am waiting for the next morning. Attorney David delivered 2 expedited court documents to Haley's hospital room with a smile. The first was an indictment for assault. The footage of Haley holding my neck down hard in the water, though blurry, was sufficient for prosecution. The second was an indictment for libel and commercial fraud, due to her defamation of me during the live stream, which directly caused my company's stock price to fluctuate. I am demanding $5 million in compensation. Not only that, I also wrote an anonymous tip-off letter to the modeling agency where Haley works, the one she is always relied on for survival, reporting that she used a fake identity and forged educational credentials. This was dirt on Haley that David dug up for fraudulent employment. In America, reputation is life. Once this tip-off letter is delivered, Haley's path in the fashion industry will be completely cut off. When attorney David explained the contents of these indictments to Haley, she was completely dumbfounded. This is a misunderstanding. Jared will testify for me. He loves me, she shouted incoherently. Mr. Jared is currently undergoing a highly controversial, off-protocol experimental treatment since he signed a comprehensive power of attorney. Miss Evelyn currently has control over all his assets, including the money he might use to pay for your legal fees. I think without sufficient bail, you'll have difficulty even hiring an ordinary defense attorney, he said coldly. Haley finally understood my malice at this moment. I not only wanted to cut off her financial resources, but also to leave her completely isolated and helpless at this moment. 3 days later, Jared was transferred from the ICU to a regular ward. Since the treatment costs were extremely expensive, all controlled by me, I chose the cheapest regular ward and didn't even hire a caregiver. Dr. Smith, following my instructions, did not restrict Jared's mobility. On the contrary, he encouraged, or rather forced Jared to undergo independent breathing training. This meant that Jared had to struggle to turn on his side, get out of bed, and even go to the bathroom without an oxygen machine, in this state of severe chronic hypoxia. Most importantly, according to Dr. Smith's medical orders, Jared currently only needed an extremely low dose of non-experimental, ordinary pneumonia medication to sustain his life. That $1 million drug that could save his life and get him back on his feet. I blocked it under the pretext that the funds haven't fully arrived yet. On this day, I brought Aunt Mary to the ward. After Aunt Mary saw Haley receive the court summons from Farah Court and get fired by the modeling agency, she had completely broken down. She knew that in this country, once you lose your credibility and source of income, she and her daughter would only end up in the slums. Lady Evelyn, I beg you to save Jared, and please spare Haley. I'll even work like a slave for you if you want. Aunt Mary knelt at my feet, pleading. This time, there was no hatred in her eyes, only fear. Taking care of people doesn't need you to do it yourself. I put on a gentle, but absolutely chilling in Jared's eyes smile. I pointed at Jared lying on the bed, gasping for air like a dying fish. Some people always have to pay the price for what they've done. Aunt Mary, since you love Jared so much, from now on, you will personally take care of Jared for the rest of his life, worse than death. I totally agreed with that statement. I immediately arranged for Aunt Mary to take care of Jared in the hospital room. Dr. Smith also cooperatively cancelled Jared's caregiver quota. Of course, Aunt Mary didn't want to. Her own health wasn't good either, and she had been taking care of Jared so that her daughter Haley could climb up. Know that Jared was ruined and Haley was done for. Why should she have to take care of a useless person? Just then, Jared woke up. He remembered everything from his past life. He looked at me, his eyes filled with despair. Evelyn, save me. Of course I have to save you, Jared. After all, I am your legal, medical power of attorney. So to keep you from feeling lonely, I've also brought you a new caregiver. I smiled as I handed a bowl filled with an unknown brownish liquid to Aunt Mary. Jared looked at the bowl of brownish liquid, his face deathly pale. He remembered his previous life. It was with the same bowl of unknown brownish medicinal liquid, actually a chronic pulmonary infection virus preparation mixed with hallucinogens, that he tricked me into drinking and then deceived me into signing those authorization documents. Due to the drug's side effects, I always believed he was saving me. Until my death, I never knew it was poison. Yes, this bowl of brownish liquid was also something I made in a private laboratory after my rebirth, using the formula I had mastered in my previous life. Aunt Mary, the doctor said that 2 bowls of this nutritional liquid daily are very beneficial for Jared's craniotomy recovery. You need to supervise him drinking it. If he refuses, I can only conclude that you are unfit to provide care as his agent, and then I'll have no choice but to remove his only oxygen supply, I said softly. Aunt Mary looked at the bowl of brownish liquid, then at my cold gaze, and tremblingly handed the bowl to Jared. As I watched Jared tremblingly drink down that bowl of poison, invented by himself in his previous life, the poison that made his life worse than death, I hummed a tune and pressed the emergency bell outside the hospital room. Talk about swallowing your own medicine. There is something intensely biblical about a man being destroyed by the exact blueprint he created to destroy a woman. Jared's sociopathy in the first life was disguised as care, slipping hallucinogenic poisons into her system under the guise of nutrition. In this life, Evelyn isn't actively killing him. She is simply serving him the cocktail he invented, hand-delivered by his beloved mistress's mother. The fact that Aunt Mary is forced to be the instrument of his torture, driven purely by self-preservation, highlights the absolute lack of loyalty among toxic people. They will eat each other alive. The second the money dries up, Jared trembled as he drank down the bowl of brown liquid that Aunt Mary handed him. The moment that intense flavor, reeking of decay, mold, and an inexplicable fishy sweetness, entered his mouth, his body violently rejected it on instinct. This was the chronic neurotoxin and hallucinogen he had personally concocted in his past life to control me, to exploit my mental vulnerabilities. In my past life, he would always gently hold the bowl and say to me, "Drink up, darling. This is a nutritional supplement specially formulated for you by Dr. Smith. It'll help you get better faster." I trusted him, gratefully drinking it down every single time, not knowing it was my ticket straight to hell. No, the roles were reversed. The drug took effect quickly. Jared's eyes began to lose focus, and due to the severe hallucinations triggered by the drug, the hospital room before him started to twist and spin. He saw countless versions of me from his past life, covered in blood, crawling toward him from all directions, hands wrapping around his neck. "Don't come closer! Evelyn, I was wrong. Save me." He struggled to wave his arms full of tubes, trying to ward off the visions before his eyes, but he couldn't even form complete sentences. Severe chronic hypoxia combined with the neurotoxin's side effects caused his motor nerves to completely malfunction. Like a beetle flipped on its back, he convulsed desperately on the sheets. Aunt Mary stood nearby, her face pale with terror, but she didn't dare move because I was standing right there, holding his medical power of attorney in my hand. Whenever I wanted, I could pull out his oxygen tube at any time. Enjoying it, Jared? I leaned close to his ear and said softly, "This is your proudest invention. Dr. Smith said this drug needs to be taken long-term to take effect. Don't worry, I'll have Aunt Mary feed it to you on time every day." Looking at his face, extremely distorted from fear and hallucinations, I pressed the emergency bell outside the ward. Haley's defamation and intentional injury case went to trial. Given the previous media frenzy, the courthouse was packed with TikTok bloggers and YouTube news anchors. Haley deliberately wore a white, cheaply tailored victim outfit, and even had that nearly invisible band aid on her face, live streaming and crying to the camera before the trial. Not only did Evelyn refuse to save me, she is also restricting Jared's personal freedom. She used money to control the medical system, all to embezzle our property. Today, before God and the law, it will expose her true face, she declared solemnly to the camera. Her live stream viewership broke an all-time high. In the courtroom, Haley, as the main witness, tearfully recounted my atrocities from the witness stand. Her lawyer, a guy who'd sell his soul for money, also did his utmost to portray me as a cold-blooded, jealous fashion industry tyrant who used her privilege to oppress an innocent childhood friend, just when public opinion was almost entirely won. Sided, Haley's TikTok followers were skyrocketing like crazy, and even the judge's expression seemed to waver a bit. Lawyer David stood up with a smile. "Your Honor, in light of Miss Haley's spectacular performance on social media and in court, I request to submit a new, previously unexposed piece of wedding video evidence." The courtroom's large screen began playing the footage, not clips from my past life, but footage from this life's wedding, secretly filmed by other guests and never made public before. The footage clearly recorded, before Haley fell into the water, how she took advantage of my inattention to quickly use a specially made small blade to cut the critical strap of her own life jacket, then delicately tumbled into the sea. Not only that, the footage also recorded how, in the water, when the lifeguard tried to throw down a life ring, Haley deliberately pushed my neck underwater, trying to make me drown instead of accepting rescue. "Oh my God," the gallery erupted in commotion. Lawyer David then presented official documents from modeling agencies and academic credential verification institutions, proving the dirt on Haley using forged identity and credentials for fraudulent employment. The final blow was a phone recording, audio recording of Jared's greedy parents. After learning that Jared had a $1 million medical power of attorney in his hands, not yet knowing it was money I controlled, attempting to lure Dr. Smith, thinking they could bribe him with money to pull Jared's breathing tube as a withdrawal of treatment to embezzle the funds. This was also the result of Attorney David's secret operation. The courtroom fell deathly silent. The comments section in the TikTok live stream instantly exploded. "What kind of devil is this? The thief crying thief fraud, attempted murder, targeting Evelyn. Even Jared's parents wanted to pull the plug. This family is terrifying." Haley finally understood my malice at this moment. I wasn't just winning against her in court. I was going to completely strip away all her dignity, credibility, and living space at this very moment, in front of the entire American public. The court rendered its verdict on the spot, Haley due to defamation and commercial fraud. Must compensate Miss Evelyn $5 million and faces 1 year of imprisonment for intentional injury. Additionally, the modeling agency and credential verification institution also submitted evidence of fraudulent employment to the police. And Haley faces more charges. More importantly, due to Jared's greedy parents' illegal attempt to pull the breathing tube with murderous intent, they were arrested on the spot, facing charges of attempted murder, and will spend the rest of their lives in prison. Jared, in the general ward, watched all of this through that shabby television. He watched his once deeply beloved Haley, whom he had abandoned me for and refused to save me, become a fraud and a public enemy in front of all America. He watched his greedy parents get thrown in jail for coveting that non-existent $1 million. The hallucinations from the medication and severe chronic peripheral neuropathic pain made every pore of his body scream in agony. He tried to pick up his phone to make a call, but due to the motor nerve dysfunction caused by the drug's side effects, he couldn't even dial a complete number. Suddenly, the television that always played Haley's live stream switched to my face. I stood elegantly by the seaside, on the yacht where we held our wedding. Backlit, the sea breeze lifting that custom-made Vera Wang wedding dress, like a goddess who had completed her revenge. Dear Jared, Dr. Smith just called me. He said that the small apartment under your name and the money in your health insurance account, which have been completely frozen and mortgaged to me by David's authorization, due to Haley's defamation and your parents' attempted murder charges, can no longer cover your subsequent expensive ICU costs and that experimental drug treatment. I gently stroked the pearls on the wedding dress, my fingernail lightly tracing over the logo there. Vera Wang, in my past life. It was under this logo that he personally put the wedding diamond ring on my finger. But after all, I am your fiancé, fair. How could I bear to watch you not make it past 3 months like this? I took out the third document, annulment of marriage agreement. According to your power of attorney, as your sole property agent, I have authorized David to handle all assets under your name, including your health insurance account. Due to your gross negligence towards Haley and your defamation of me causing company stock fluctuations, these assets will all be liquidated as my compensation. Jared, our marriage ends completely from this moment on. As for that $1 million oxygen machine project, since the funds were not fully received. In reality, lawyer David legally transferred this money to my trust fund using the power of attorney, and, due to your parents' attempted murder charges, your insurance company has completely refused to provide any follow-up physical therapy coverage. You can wait for your parents to rush over from prison to issue that abandoned treatment certificate. But Dr. Smith said that even with all your liquidated assets, including that broken Ford of yours and what is left in your health insurance, it is only enough to pay for you to painfully sustain 2 months of life on the cheapest chronic care bed in a public hospital, relying on the lowest setting oxygen assistance device. My voice was cold and clear-headed, without a trace of guilt. Enjoy your new life, Jared. This is what you deserve. I disconnected the television connection. 2 months later, Jared died on a cheap hospital bed in the public hospital, in the final days of his life, due to long-term mental confusion and severe pain caused by medication, aside from relying on Aunt Mary to tremblingly feed him those 2 bowls of poison that he himself had developed in his previous life every day. Poison that made him wish he were dead. He didn't even have the strength to make a sound. Excluding the fact that due to insurance refusal to cover, due to my using the power of attorney to cut off all subsequent funding, Dr. Smith, his legal fully property exempt document had no choice but to remove his last oxygen support. Until his death, he didn't know it was poison. Until his death, due to severe chronic lung disease causing serious brain fibrosis, and due to long-term use of hallucinogens. His consciousness wandered in the nightmares of his previous life and this life. Only I attended his funeral. It was also me. This fiancé Fei, who used the power of attorney to hastily cremate him, after confirming that all his premarital assets had been stripped away through legal procedures and mortgaged to me, and after his pitiful remaining medical insurance balance was completely liquidated due to compensation for a series of defamation cases, and attempted murder charges. Attempted murder. Haley was imprisoned for defamation, fraud, scam crimes, slander, and attempted intentional injury, completely becoming a criminal despised by society at this moment. Her mother Mary, due to deliberate connivance and employment fraud, also barely survived in the bottom slums because of the massive compensation from Haley that bankrupted the entire family. On a sunny day, I once again boarded the private yacht hired by the 4 young ladies who had once been my bridesmaids. I wore that Vera Wang blood, red wedding dress stained with salt and nightmares. I flushed all of Jared's ashes down the drain. The next day, I took those 4 young ladies who had shined brilliantly in the PR and sales departments. The 4 young ladies who had been beaten down by life in their past lives and were now reused by me in this life, and boarded the private yacht purchased by the private trust fund. Clear skies, scorching sun, an endless sea, a brand new life begins here. Darlings, let's take a collective deep breath and process the absolute perfection of what we just witnessed. At its core, this isn't just a story about a sensational revenge on a yacht. It's a brutally honest autopsy of 2 of the most toxic archetypes out there, thero-complex narcissist and the pick-me childhood best friend. Let's dissect Jared first. Men like him don't actually love women. They love the optics of being worshipped. He wanted Evelyn's pristine wealth and status, but he needed Haley's manufactured damsel in distress routine to feed his fragile ego. And Haley, she is the quintessential covert narcissist, the girl who cuts her own life jacket just to prove she can make a man prioritize her over his actual fiancé Fei. We've all met a Haley. They weaponize their incompetence and disguise their malice as innocent clumsiness. But what I adore most about Evelyn's rebirth is her chillingly pristine rationalism. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, and she didn't confront them with her memories of the past life. Anger is loud, but true strategy is whisper, quiet. Her revenge wasn't about matching their hysteria. It was about laying out the legal and financial traps and simply letting their own greed and vanity push them in. She used power of attorney documents, ironclad prenups, and the undeniable truth of raw video footage. She let Haley destroy her own reputation on TikTok by giving her enough rope to politically hang herself. And she let Jared's own parents catch felony charges purely out of their own greed. Evelyn didn't have to get her hands dirty. The trash literally took itself out. This story is a phenomenal reminder for all of us. Your empathy is a privilege, not a free buffet for emotional vampires. If someone throws you to the wolves, you do not jump in to save them when they start getting bitten.